Hello, everyone, and thank you all so much for joining us today. I'm Paul Bowman. I'm Vertical Head of International in Barclays Business, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the next event in our Founders Assembly programme, brought to you by Eagle Labs and CodeBase. Now, as passionate supporters of the whole of the UK entrepreneurial and scale-up economy, we at Barclays are really keen to be providing the innovators and scalers in the UK with the insight, environment, tools and support to access new markets and generate opportunities within new sectors and emerging industries so that you can build exciting, sustainable and profitable businesses. Now, this may be through our traditional and new banking products and services, expert guidance from our international growth teams, or our exciting programs which are delivered with partners such as CodeBase, or through the Eagle Labs Academy, which is a free online learning tool where you can learn at your own pace. Now, if you are just starting out or scaling your business, then there is a modular learning process that you can access to guide you through building your business. So check that out after this session today if you haven't already. And you can find it at academy.uk.barclays. Now, for today's event, Navigating International Expansion, we've asked founder and CEO of Zelim, Sam Mayall, who will be in discussion with Jennifer from CodeBase, to actually share some stories and insights garnered around his personal international expansion journey and to explore how tough the bumps in the road can be. Now, the topics discussed are an overview of options for you to think about and to help you with your own independent research and business decisions. Think of them as pointers, etc. So they're not intended as recommendations or advice. And remember as well that your business has its own individual circumstances. The statements and views expressed may not be applicable or suitable for your business. That's the boring part over. If you found yourself with us via YouTube, you can find a link to VVox in the description below to be able to join in the chat. That's enough from me. I'm now going to hand over to Jennifer to introduce herself and Sam and dive into today's session. Jennifer, over to you.
Thanks so much, Paul. Sam, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. So very briefly, I am the VP of Business Acceleration at CodeBase. And so my job is to make sure that companies get up and out and explore what is possible internationally and I guess off planet too. But Sam, I will refrain from the choppy waters motifs as we go through our conversation today. But I know that what you're doing is so transformative because you're really changing the face of maritime rescue and using AI and semi-autonomous vessels and things. So I'd love to just dive in with you if we can. Tell us a little bit about what motivated you to choose that as your expression of creativity.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer, and thanks, Paul, and I guess thanks, Barclays, for having us. So I'm Sam. My background is a mariner, so I had zero intention of starting a business at the time of which I started a business. So background is really offshore, so everything from teaching kids to sail all the way up to building oil and gas rigs and kind of everything in between. So founded the company with a few personal sort of incidents that are very close to my heart, and I lost a couple of friends overboard, and there was a feeling of, can we do better? Can we utilize technology? What's on the market? How can we be quicker? How can we save lives? And that then led us to several pints in the pub moment, and the idea of unmanned rescue and using vision systems to find people and things all came about, and then really went on a proper startup journey. So nearly gone out of business several times, made some very expensive mistakes. I'm not allowed to swear. I've made several mistakes along the journey and keep making mistakes, but pulled together an awesome team of individuals and investors, and really gone from an idea literally on the back of a napkin in a pub to now we've got contracts all over the world with cruise vessels, ferries, nation states, and sort of defence government contracts. So then also in ports and this kind of thing. So still building the plane as in flight is a way of describing it, or
Absolutely.
Learning how to fly without falling out of a tree.
Yeah, or the boat on the water.
Yeah.
If we go there. But firstly, I'm sorry it was such a tragedy that actually spurred this on. But often, these ideas about transforming the world do come from a very poignant personal moment. And I think it's really a beautiful way of coming full circle with what you're doing now. So, I mean, the obvious question for me right now is, by its very nature, you're dealing with oceans, you're dealing with the planet, right? There are several oceans that need to be dealt with. So from go, this has been an international endeavor because there's really no other way to do it. So I'm curious, how did you choose where to go first with this?
So, believe it or not, we actually started in offshore wind. So at the time of starting, offshore wind was kind of on the up and up. We worked out some business cases within offshore wind where it was people should invest in safety anyway, is my belief, but ultimately there's finance guys irritatingly get in the way, and then you have to pull together business cases as to why is this an investment rather than a cost. And we pulled together some business cases in offshore wind, looking specifically in the UK market as a market that was booming at the time, and then started pulling partners in and going and proving what was then the unproven, and then you went through the motions of prototypes and more prototypes, and then start presenting that to customers, presenting that to investors, and then as we got into it even more, you start getting the initial traction, initial letters of intent, and this kind of thing. And we were quite UK centric to start off with. We knew that there's a big world out there, but as a small team of when we started 4 or 5 guys, it's really difficult to go around the world continuously. But then we've expanded.
Sure. So, and it sounds like you started with where and what but knowing that you would eventually have to go obviously beyond the borders. So I'm curious if you could go back and do it again, what would you have done differently in that first step, if anything?
I think there's several things. There's a lot of things I would have done differently, and I could have done it an awful lot quicker, knowing what I know now to what I knew then. And I think there's errors, and let's just call them cock-ups, are a part of life, and you have to sort of learn through doing, not sort of try and learn through reading everything. You just got to go and do. I think one of the key things is product market fit. So is the product the right product for the right market? That's the first question. And then the second question is it the right time? So what we came up with as the first product was totally revolutionary for the offshore wind industry. We had free-falling, totally unmanned lifeboats that were going to be installed on offshore wind platforms, and it could change the whole layout of wind farms. Wind farms could make more energy through putting this new concept on board, and we got a lot of buy-in for that. And then when push comes to shove, when eventually you get to, right, there's somebody that has the budget here and has to make the decision. They liked the concept. They could see the business case, but ultimately the innovation was too new for that market. It was too much of a step change, and that's a really painful thing, having spent millions of pounds building it and everybody saying the right thing, and when push comes to shove, nobody's paying this.
Yeah. And I think that's, if you're a bleeding edge thinker, you will always come up against this with the first iteration of your idea, right? Because you're living in a future people can't see yet. And so there is this gap of understanding. So sometimes you have to then pivot to something that will get them, it's like a baby step for them to be able to eventually get them where they are now. And of course, hindsight is always 2020, right? But it's hard to be excited about something that will change things, but you're stuck in but this is what the world can deal with right now and with what's in front of me. So that's very challenging. What would you say to yourself if you could go back to that version of you? Because I'm sure it was frustrating, right? To have to dial it back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think if I could go back and sort of tell myself, what I know now, I would say baby steps. It's you especially as a small unproven company, you have to put in incremental steps to get to the end state, and you have to get confidence from confidence in yourselves that firstly you can deliver, and then it's confidence in your customer base that you can deliver, and then it's confidence in investors that you can deliver. And it's then, rather than trying to eat the elephant whole, just eat a little bit of the elephant at a time, and then eventually it's going to be several years, at least several years. If you're providing a real step change, you have to put the incremental steps in to take everyone on the journey, because if it's too new, it's a difficult thing to get customers on board with, in particular in the space that we're in, which is kind of highly regulated, mission critical, and ultimately people's lives depend on it.
You're actually saving lives. So it's we have that as a throwaway phrase, but you're actually saving lives. So there is a lot at stake. And I think a very typical founder problem is, we'll know point A, we'll know point Z, but B, C, D, E, F are really what makes or breaks that first piece, but they're the hardest to figure out because you have to get the first few steps right. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the other thing is, in particular when you're starting out, don't be too hard and fast on your original idea. The landscape changes, and in our case, our original concept was free falling unmanned rescue boats that had conveyor systems on them, and go and change the world, Thunderbird stuff. But actually, as we started talking to all the customers, what they're really interested in is then you've got this piece of the puzzle, which is a vision system in our case, and that piece of the puzzle is really valuable to the customers. And then, as a consequence, we've kind of pivoted, and we've pivoted a couple of times to listen to what the customers are telling us, and then back to the original point, it's right product at the right time. It doesn't mean that the original idea is not valid, but I think there's a lot of people can spend a lot of time trying to flog a dead horse. And I think one of our investors said to us very early on, he said, Sam, make sure you don't make the world's best machine at shoeing horses. And it's such a valid point, where you can kind of say, well, you might have the best idea in your mind, and shoeing horses is a great example. It's like, you could have the best contraption, but really, is there a market for that? And
that's just it. Yeah. So it's kind of this, you think about right product, right timing, but it's really the version of your product that is right for this moment. And it could be that your ultimate vision will come to fruition, but you might end up somewhere completely different from what you expected. Right.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about it is so daunting to think about international expansion because it is such a regulated space that you're in. It is, there are so many legal quagmires to weave through. So what have you learned from that? It seems like an enormous task.
Yeah, learned a hell of a lot, and still learning a hell of a lot. I think for those companies just in the UK, the UK is a really small market. It's a really small market, and British people are unfortunately quite conservative by nature, and that makes it challenging for UK companies trying to do innovative things. So I think it's then look really globally. Where is the problem statement that you believe that you're addressing, and then look at that on an international scale. And it's classic sort of sales stuff. Who's got the problem and who's got the budget? And it's really as simple as that. If somebody's got the problem but not the budget, forget it. Forget it and move on. And if somebody's got the budget but no problem, also forget it. So it's then looking on a global level. Where is this going to be? Where is our product going to fit best? And you've got to cast the net really wide to start off with. You've got to look at the whole world. It's, you can get anywhere in the world within a day. So look at the whole world. It might not be just Europe. It might not be just the States. You might find like South America or Australia or New Zealand or all these kind of places that are miles away, but they have the problem and the budget, and in which you just got to go. You just got to go. So cast the net really wide, and then you hone that down. Once you've sort of found the product market fit, problem, and the budget, and then it's all right. Where am I going to spend my time? Because you've only got a finite amount of time, and then there's other constraining factors that come in to say, for example, Asia. Asia's a booming market, and in our case, they have the problem and they have the budget. But then you've got a big time zone difference, and you've got a big cultural difference, and you've got a big language barrier. Yeah. And that makes it really difficult. So then, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that?
Yeah. And do they expect you to have a team on the ground in order to build that relationship with you, right? Because you're dealing, again, with life-saving mechanisms. So what did you have to set up for your first international destination, if you don't mind sharing?
So we've set up in the States, and we're setting up in the Middle East. We'll have the office registration done hopefully by the end of this week. Then we're also setting up in Canada. So depending on the market and what you're trying to fulfill in the market, there's a number of different ways of doing that. One is setting up your own subsidiary, employing guys. That has its own challenges. That also has its own cost implications, investment implications. But there are benefits to that. If you have an office, there, you have people there, you have boots on the ground that are your people. They are, incentivized to sell your stuff, and you control that wholly. And that, in the eyes of a lot of customers, is commitment to the region, and that's what you want to show in a lot of cases. In other markets that are potentially harder to service, and cash flow is a real thing. You can't go everywhere all of the time. So then, in other markets, you might want to go, well, we have a product here we're making, whatever the margin is, can we give a bit of that margin away to someone who can sell it for us, who speaks the local language, knows the market really well, and then can get the product into the market. So and then quite often it's a combination of either one or the other, or a sort of mixture of both. Yeah.
And so what did that look like from a team perspective? So you started with this small team, you have a small team of people. Yeah. And now you've got to go into a market. What was your way to be able to do that? Did you bring on a freelance team? How did you go about that?
You can do quite well with contractors. So I think in particular, if you're working with people a long way away where you can't see them all the time, the trust elements are a really important bit. So if you can lean on your network to go, right, who do we know? Who do we have relationships with that we can bring in? I'm a big believer in try before you buy with hiring people. If you can try people out, sort of bit of contract stuff, you're not too obliged one way or the other, then you can try that out. And if they're a good, they're a good team fit, good cultural fit, and they're doing a good job, then bring them on the books and get up and get going. And the same goes for distributors. If you can lean on your network of people to say, right, who do we know to start off with, definitely go and do a bit of a beauty parade, and definitely do a proper onboarding process. That's something that we've had our fingers burned with, is believing the glitz and the glamour, then you end up in a nightmare later on down the line. So definitely go through a sort of a rigorous sort of onboarding process, get quality people to do an audit on whoever you bring in, and then make sure your contractual terms are, you can get out as easily as you got in until they've proven themselves.
Sure. And I think too, something to think about is that, it cannot be underestimated the power, or overstated the power, of your personal network and having a high value network. And what I mean by that is, you have your inner circle and your people that you talk to and your fellow founders, but to be able to get to what you need for things like that, international contacts, international lawyers, and things of that nature, it is really important to spend time building your network, because we get questions so often from founders saying, how do I get to investors? It's like, well, you need to actually do the work to weave the tapestry, the social tapestry, to be able to get to them. So I think that being able to reach out to someone and say, hey, who do you know on the ground in Singapore who we can go to, makes a massive difference and cuts the time much shorter, because you have built-in trust. And I think it's just something we glaze over thinking about the big vision and how we have to get there. We do have some questions coming in. So actually, this is a good segue in terms of, how does international expansion typically impact the fundraising and investor expectations? So we've talked about the kind of how you build your team, but then what are investors expecting as you head into those markets?
That depends on the investors that you've got supporting you, and the constraints that they may have or may not have. Everybody wants to see the revenue graph go up and right.
Of course.
So yeah, depending on the investors that you wind up with, I would say one of the things we've done really well is we've got really good investors around the table, and they help. Like they put the cash in and sort of get you going. But a lot of these, either VC funds or individuals or whoever else, have got really, really good networks themselves. And if they don't know someone, more than likely they know someone. And I think there's a sort of a misnomer about people as a founder wanting to be the guy that knows everything. And if you just end up and ask for help and say, look, this is what I'm thinking, I want to go and have a chat to somebody, or somebody that knows somebody, it's very hard for people to say no. And then that kind of leads you to the next place, and then the next place. And as you start building a picture, that you can then start making decisions based on the information that you have. So I think the investor base is quite important. But then there's like the UK has really good sort of innovation type schemes where you can get access to a market, and sort of that network's there already.
Sure.
Lean on them and they'll pay you to go.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is, an investor is putting money into you because they believe in your vision and what you can accomplish. So it is important to lean on them for those things, because they want to help. That's why they're there, to help you scale. So I think that's a really important thing to remember. In terms of legal advisors, we have a question here. What role do local legal advisors or government trade agencies play in mitigating some of that risk for investors?
Unfortunately, you've got to get lawyers involved, and they're always expensive. But if depending on who your sort of legal advisor is, if you go with a reputable legal advisor, they will likely have in-country partners in most of the countries that people are looking at. So that is a first port of call. If you're going and setting up somewhere, then most likely your lawyer will have contacts in the right place.
So did you specifically select a lawyer who would give you broad enough global scope from the first day?
It was more fluke, but that's what we did.
Okay.
That's what we did. Yeah,
That worked out.
And then again, sort of networks within investor base. If you're not getting the right answers out of your lawyers, speak to your network, speak to other entrepreneurs, speak to even customers, and go, right, who do you recommend? This is what I'm trying to do, because most lawyers will tell you that they can do most things, but actually there's then specialists per sort of market segment, and people that are good at different areas.
Yeah, and I think there are also people who make money by doing that very glamorous show of, we can bring you into market and we can give you everything you need, and it's this much money. And you really have to vet those people, because yes, sometimes those personal connections in market will make or break you, but you need to be able to qualify who they are, who referred them, where did they come from. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I think potentially an interesting point for some of the guys in the room. If you're looking to raise capital, the legal representation is quite important, and who you choose as a lawyer, because in the UK it's sort of a you use corporate finance people, or various different ways of raising cash. The model in the States and in Singapore and other places, but the States in particular, is your lawyer helps you do that. And there's a number of legal firms that are connected to all of the investors. So in terms of access to investors, you can go and send 1 million emails, as I have done, and you get no response at all. But if you have that warm introduction through your legal firm, and they sort of buy into the journey with you, that can be super helpful.
Absolutely. So let's shift gears a little bit. We have a question about AI. How might AI and automation change how businesses operate internationally in the next few years? And obviously you're living in this future already. So what are you seeing?
That's a good question.
Or what you do specifically.
So I think we're in a bit of an AI bubble at the moment. I think everybody's using AI. And if you're not using AI, people are asking questions, why are you not using AI?
Yeah.
And I think it's becoming, just more and more commonplace. So I think the key bit is how do you differentiate in those markets, and what's your sort of special sauce, and how do you outpace the competition and be different and competitive in those markets. And I think there's then lots of AI tools that you can use to make your life easier and sort of accelerate workload and this kind of thing. If you're buying services in, you can use tools rather than people. Sure. It gets you sort of 70% the way there.
Well, and I think particularly with what you do, it's probably saved a lot of labor costs, right? Because of the nature of the work that you do. So for you, it's been pivotal in being able to expand the way you have. Yeah.
Yeah. So artificial intelligence is a core piece of our puzzle, and it, rather than replacing people, it unlocks a new way of working. So you're trying to augment a gap in the market that's always been there, but there's been no way of solving that problem. So that's what we're doing. AI does replace people in certain circumstances, and I think depending on where you go, be careful about pitching that, because there's some people don't necessarily like that.
Well, I like the way that you've presented it here, though. It's not that it's replacing people, it's presenting a new way of working, and that will require people, but it's the workflow, if you will, that shifts. I mean, we'll always need humans to do things, but I think that is more of the conversation that's now emerging in AI, is that yes, everyone's going to use it. It's going to be part of our everything, but now how do we thoughtfully leverage its capabilities? So that's what I'm hearing in what you're saying.
Yeah.
So in terms of the success measurements, right? So you're looking at international markets, you go into your first market. How do you know? Obviously, revenue is an obvious one, but how do you know you're doing it right? How do you know that you're winning?
That's a great question. It takes a lot of time, is one thing I would say. And I can only say for us is at least 18 months before you first go and put your flag in the ground before you see anything like revenue coming out of anywhere. So there's no sort of quick way of doing it unless you're with distributors and you've got customers lined up. But certainly for us, like our technology is generally sort of quite high value, complex kind of cells. So it just takes a long time. You got to be prepared for that, and you got to have your investors on board with that. And for sure, there's frustrations, and it just takes longer, and inevitably it costs more. So make sure you build that into your models. But I think it's sort of it's back to the smart objectives. So and then putting milestones in the ground, and then proper customer intimacy documents and customer mapping, and then it's right. Are we seeing the traction that we want to see? Are we high enough up the food chain? Are we reaching the decision makers, or are we just having sort of nice conversations at middle management level?
And as a founder, how did you find the patience to wait that through? Because one of the most frustrating things is knowing you've got the solution, but it's going to take 18 months for the market to say yes to this.
It's bloody awful. It is the truth of it. And I'm just the most impatient person ever, and I'm unrealistic all the time. And I set unrealistic expectations of myself, I set unrealistic expectations of the team. We push like hell to try and get things done, but the reality is you can only, it sort of takes as long as it takes, and you can try everything in your power to shortcut things, but you're not going to get it right first time. And then you've just got to be prepared for some of these setbacks at a bit of the back end too. And you might be lucky, and you might just sort of get on with it, and it goes off straight away, or it might take longer.
Sure. So what do you do for yourself to manage the stress of that? Because that's a lot of stress to take on.
That's a different question completely, but for me, it's try and detach yourself from the day to day. Take proper time to detach. If you can get a coach, I've got a superb coach who sort of helps with all of that, and then you're not defined by the business. Easy thing to say, but much harder thing to do. And try and detach yourself and just take time. And on a weekend, I'll just leave my phone at home and go away for the weekend. Totally contactable, and try and reset.
Yeah, you need to give your neurons a break, right? So they can replenish and you can have fresh ideas when you come back. But I think that's something that so often gets glazed over in the life of a founder. It is one of the most stressful gauntlets you will ever run as a human being. And it is a willingness to be misunderstood 99% of the time, and to hear no 99% of the time. So I think that if we don't acknowledge that it's necessary to regroup and decompress, then you face burnout within the first few years, and you certainly don't want to do that. So I'm glad that you take time to do so, and I invite everyone listening to do the same. Okay, so aside from that, if we're looking at international expansion, you're in markets, you're learning the legal ways in, what kind of people you need on the ground. What other caveats are there? Like, what are some other lessons you wish you had learned by magic before you went into market?
I think it's it's kind of, as I said, it's either sort of local partnerships, distribution channels, this kind of thing.
Cultural pieces?
Say that again, sorry.
What about the cultural pieces? What are the cultural challenges? Because every culture is a little bit different.
100%, 100%, and there are places you can go and get advice for these kind of things. So ask the cultural question. If you go to Asia, there's a very different way of engaging with people and talking to people than if you go to the States. Like, the States is kind of very much can-do attitude. Let's get on with it.
Yeah.
And quite a lot, quite often it's sort of dream work. So then that off, you have to then sort of sensitize that down and go, how much of what this person has just said is reality and how much of it is BS.
We're like the extreme of fantasy land, and you can have anything you want. Right?
Yeah, and that's a really nice thing to hear, but you've got to cut through it, and you've got to go, show me the money, show me who's got the budget. So yeah, then you go the other way, and it takes a much longer time to build relationships with people. You got to take people out. You got to wine and dine people. You got to build that trust, that connection, for people to then lean into what you're doing. I think there's a definite difference between B2C and B2B. So obviously I'm in the B2B world and don't know a huge amount about B2C, but I think if it's on a B2B basis, the relationships are really important, and you got to spend proper time being out and about with people.
And where did you go to find that? You said there are places you can go to learn that information. How did you do it?
It's a mixture of we hired people into our company. So as I said at the start, learning how to fly whilst falling out of a tree. Best way to cover your blind spots is to hire people in your immediate core team who've got a lot of this experience, and they've got the war wounds, they've got the grey hairs, or no hairs in our case, and they sort of know quite a lot about that, and you can lean on their experience. I think the other is, depending on your team, there's people like Innovate UK, they run sort of trade missions, and I'm sure Paul can talk more about that, but there's people that run trade missions, and as part of that they give like lessons on how do you culturally sort of interact with people, what is it like to do business here, and then those guys more often than not are trying to facilitate the relationship, and it's in their interest to facilitate the relationships, so really lean into them. And depending on the stage of the company, you can get sort of little bits of money to go and help you do that, help you set up.
Yeah, and they spend a great deal of time and effort and money to make sure that the trade mission has, prominence in the world where founders are, wherever they might be, so that some of them have soft landing hubs where you can go into market and have a co-working space and things like that. So I think you're right that the trade missions are a really great place to explore and understand as you're heading into market.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So let's see, we've got lots of questions flying in. What are the most effective ways to test a new international market before committing major resources?
Have a go-to-market customer. Have a sort of a case study where have somebody that you can point to as this is our first customer here. and there's again, one of the things sort of learned along the way, there's no greater compliment than cash. So if people are telling you it's great, then pay for it, and then that's a sort of a great case study to build upon, and that that obviously goes in the UK market to start off with, and then further afield. So yeah, in terms of how do you test the waters, if you can get that go-to-market customer, spend a lot of time with that customer to get one thing right at a time, and don't try and boil the ocean, just try and boil one customer.
See, I knew you would buy into the motif before we got to the end of this talk. So in that case, is it worth it then to, it's sort of that hashtag pilot, right? Like, let's pilot something, let's see what works. Sometimes it's worth cutting a special deal if you can get into market and get the case study numbers and things like that. So I agree that is a good strategy.
Yeah, 100%. And sometimes you might do something that's not super profitable, or you might even be a loss leader, but it kind of cements your flag in the ground, and it's kind of right, we're here. You can get the marketing on the back of that. You can get the sort of local marketing partners to do a push on that, and then I'm a believer in push to test as quickly as you can,
Absolutely.
and see what happens.
In terms of, we've had a question on the best company structure for international growth, and I'm wondering what structure did you use for yours?
I'm definitely not the right person to answer that, but I can tell you what we did. We have a subsidiaries, so we just set up subsidiaries, and there are potentially advantages to having wholly owned subsidiaries and bank accounts locally, and then you can sort of buy locally and sell locally, so you mitigate some of your currency exchange risk. And then depending on what you're trying to do, some of those companies then need to have their own board. So then you, as the sort of the top co, you have to lose control of the subsidiary, in particular if you're doing sort of government contracting, basically.
Mm-hmm. And what is that like as a founder? Because that giving up control is not something we do well. It's kind of terrifying, especially in a foreign country where you don't have the strongest toehold. What is that like?
Get the right team, get the right individuals around the table, because it is easy for people to pull the wool over your eyes. Mm-hmm. And you have to be able to have that trust in the individual, where you look them across the table and you say, do I believe what you're saying? And I think that's a fundamental piece of the puzzle. And the people within the company are the people that make the company, for sure.
Absolutely. And what do you think, in terms of the way that we think of failure? This is a left field question, but I come up against this a lot, coming from the US, where failure is sort of the way to get there, right? You keep failing and iterating until you get there. I find that the UK is a lot more reserved culturally in that regard. What have you found? Did you come up against anything as you were going through that process from your own cultural upbringing?
We have made a lot of failures. And when you first start doing it, you look at yourself and you're like, oh, God's sakes, again, why has this not worked again? And there's a bit of a misnomer of, you beat yourself up and it's like, what, why didn't this work? And then people start going into like a waterfall design, and waterfall sort of big upfront design, and you sort of whittle it down and whittle it down and whittle it down. Yeah. Unfortunately for tech companies, most people don't have the time to do that. Most people don't have the time, and they don't have the money. So you've got to embrace failure as just a part of the course, and you've got to get your investors on board with it, and you've got to go, well, that didn't work. And it's the same with anything. 1,000 no's and a yes is still a yes in my book.
That's it.
So yeah, 100% failures are a par for the course. If you can try and avoid the expensive ones, that's
well, that's the key, isn't it? Yeah.
And that's where, good team, good advisors, bounce ideas. And if you're going to do something a little bit risky and you're not sure how this is going to play out, get your investors on board before you do it.
That's probably a really great idea. But I think that it's, if we can separate failure of an idea from being a failure as a human being, right? And this is an age-old question, but it's, the only way to fail as a human is to die. That's really the only way. Everything else is learning. It's breaking things. It's trying to create new calculations and all of that. So I think that in the startup world, particularly here in the UK, we've got to embrace it in a different way. It doesn't mean something's wrong or bad. It means that one didn't work. Let's try the next one. But we have centuries of cultural stuff around that to get through first, which I think is really challenging.
Yeah, 100%. And it's that kind of comes back to incremental gains, and it's we've tried to boil the ocean and we failed. We've done very complicated things, really, really complicated things. And then you kind of get it all to work as well. And then ultimately it's too complicated for the customer and it's too much of a thing for the customer. So it's how can you do marginal gains to increase your sort of confidence as you go through, and don't try and certainly pitch the step change. That's your North Star. That's where you're going. But put the steps in, put the checks and balances in to de-risk yourself along the way. And then you're better off failing on a 10 grand exercise than failing on a 10 million pound exercise.
Yeah, exactly. So given what you now know, has anything changed in terms of your moonshot? Do you still have the same big goal at the end that you had when you started?
Yeah, so our big goal has always remained the same. So our big goal is to save lives at sea. That's what we want to do, and that's what we're doing. The way in which we do that, that's changed. So you have your mission and your vision. Our vision statement was make unmanned rescue normal. So that's now changed to protecting what matters most to our customers, and that sort of, we're still achieving our mission statement. We're still going where we want to go. We're doing it in different ways, but it's listening to the market, and it's get the right product market fit, and sort of you shouldn't lose where you've come from, or you shouldn't go, that was a cock up, and forget about that. We talk about it all the time.
Sure.
And then it's because the story is really important.
But I love what you've said there about the vision being protecting what matters most, because that has a very broad definition that has enabled you to expand your thinking in terms of what you protect. So can you say more about that? Like, what's the variety of things that you know?
Yeah, it's again, back to the sort of listen to the market. The thing you start out doing might not be the thing that you end up doing. So for us, we developed a capability to find people in the water a long way away. The crux engine of that is you have to be able to identify small objects at long range. And we spent a lot of money, a lot of time, and we built this great engine to go and do that. And then you say, well, again, listening to the customers, what are the challenges? Going and having a coffee with someone and going, what's your pain points at the moment?
Yeah.
Can I solve any of those pain points? Sounds like a dumb question, but if you don't ask it, you don't know.
But it's very obvious, but often skipped.
Yeah, sort of mistakes. And then for us, we can find people in the water. Can we find threats to navigation? Can we find security threats? And it's like, yeah, we can find a person in the water a mile away.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure we could find a small boat 5 miles away. That sort of leads us into another thing, and now we're doing, contracts in defence for security of ships, and that's completely different to saving lives at sea in a search and rescue setting. We're now doing we're seeking things to protect a warship. So if you're getting threats coming into the warship, it all fits under our North Star of, we want to save lives at sea. And there's a number of sort of spin out applications. So don't be scared of doing other things and trying other things.
Well, it's interesting because we just got a question that is a fitting one for that. And it's really, how do you prepare for geopolitical or economic instability in a new international market? It's not exactly the same thing, but it speaks to, it sounds like it's a seeking opportunity in the face of that, but I'll let you answer. That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, we've had that in the States with the change of government in the States, and what we thought was going to happen, a new regulation coming in, basically mandating ships to have our technology. Change of government, we're not mandating anything, and we go, some words, and that's a big problem. But then on the flip side of that, you kind of go, okay, well, where are the other opportunities? What's happening? And you have to be able to sort of pivot from one thing to another. So with instability comes a whole heap of problems, but a part of that is then there's opportunities as well, and it's how you sort of turn problems into opportunities, and sometimes it's just really painful, and that's where it's good to be not too focused in one market. And if you can pick a couple of different markets, you de-risk yourself, and if you can be in a number of different areas. So our story, we were in offshore wind, and offshore wind was going up and up and up, and it looked fantastic, and then all of the subsidies change. The bottom very much fell out of the industry, and now it's cost cutting, and we're a cost, so there's no chance that we're getting in there. And we happily managed to diversify out of that, and then we're now in several markets across several different things. So as one market goes up, another one goes down. So it's being able to sort of pivot your resource and pivot your effort. And I think that there's people heavily weighted into offshore wind that went out of business because they were very heavily weighted to offshore wind, and they had a great product that could have gone into several different markets, but they were in the market.
Well, and I think that speaks to a bigger issue, and it's that, and it could be just that we're much more attuned to it right now, but the world itself is very volatile right now. So you could be in any number of fields and have volatility like you've never had before. And I think it's a poignant piece of being a founder that we've got to be ready for those moments. There just seem to be a lot more of them than we're used to. But I think that the agility we can develop from that, even though it's terribly stressful, sometimes it creates a forced clarity of like, okay, this is what we do. This is how we can adapt for whatever is happening ahead. And it builds our muscles in being able to be resilient. So it's not the worst thing for a founder to be forced to refine under pressure, but it's not pleasant.
Certainly try not to get too pregnant with one way of thinking, because inevitably you end up with a curveball, and you go, that this whole thing that I've spent a year pulling together, just something from left field. It's like, okay, that's taken that off the table, and then it's okay. What are the other things? What are the other balls we've got in the air?
Yeah. Well, and I think also having that very clear North Star. This is what we do in the world. This is why we're here. What does that now mean? Right? Given what's just happened in this part of the world, how does that translate into what they do? And just like you said, with a world at risk and a world at war and all of those things, there is opportunity in that to make things better, safer, clearer. So I think that, given what you do, you're helping either way. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I think pull a good team together, and good teams do good things, and we
That's
can deal
it.
with quite a lot of adversity and change, and
Well, and for you, I'm curious. So as a founder, having had to put a team together, what kind of archetypes do you have around you? Because it sounds like you're the sort of the bleeding edge visionary, but then you also dial it back to be sort of in the day-to-day when you have to, which is hard to do. It's hard to shift those gears.
I'm sure my team would disagree with me, but I'm the unrealistic one for sure. I think it's what you want in a team is you want everybody to be excellent. You want somebody who is excellent at the thing that they are employed to be excellent at, and you hire to cover their gaps. So it's if somebody's, take school, for example, if somebody's great at maths and rubbish at French, don't penalize them for being rubbish at French, just get them to be excellent at maths, and then hire someone who can speak French. It's that kind of a game where you want people to be the best version of what they're excellent at, and then it's hire for the strengths and cover the weaknesses with different people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sam, thank you so much for letting me take us down a winding path around the globe. I think there's been a lot of great insight that you've shared today. So thank you for being with us. And I just wanted to share with everyone listening now, there is our next event with Barclays is on Thursday, November 13th at the same time, noon. It's a founders assembly where we're going to talk about fundraising, and it's a masterclass with a special focus on people going to Slush in Finland in November. So, Paul, I will turn it back to you. Thank you for having us today.
No worries at all. Thank you, Sam, for all of that insight. I found it incredibly helpful, and so much resonates with some of the things that I and my colleagues talk to customers about on a regular basis. And I think that one of the things that struck me about what you were talking about was almost actually, if you're not making mistakes, are you actually taking the right risks? I think that, the risk of failure, the risk of being seen to fail within the UK environment can be debilitating sometimes. So I think it was really interesting to hear what you were talking about there. And I think a lot of what we also do as well is that, certainly from my perspective, when I'm talking with businesses about international trade, it's the element of being prepared actually gives you increased flexibility. So making sure that your business plan that you're putting together gives you the ability to flex and turn and change, because you know what's going on within different markets, with different products that you might be looking at, different environments that you're working with, different cultures that you're working with as well. And it was an interesting point, Jennifer, you were talking there about the cultural side of things. One recommendation I've got for people right now is to have a look at, let me just go back there because I've written it down for myself. It's Hofstede's 6 Dimensions model of societal culture. It's a really interesting tool to be able to compare and contrast different countries, different cultures, and understand where the similarities are or where differences might be, so that you can then understand how you can evolve into different markets and different marketplaces. So that's Geert Hofstede's 6-dimensional model of societal culture. You'll probably find that really helpful and useful as well. And as I say, we definitely recommend joining the next session, the Founders Assembly, on the 13th of November. So thanks for giving it a shout there, Jennifer. So guys, thanks ever so much for dialing in today. Huge amount of support and insights and exciting stories as well provided by Sam. Sam, thank you very much for your time. Jennifer hosted superbly, really appreciated. And also a thank you to everybody as well for making all of those really informative questions, which I think has also enabled Sam to share further insight, and hopefully you've taken more value away from it. From my perspective, if you aren't aware of Eagle Labs and all the work, the great work that goes on from there, please do visit the labs.uk Barclays to find out more about all the support that's available to help businesses such as yours. We've just launched lots of exciting new programs, and there's something for everybody on there. Whatever stage of business you're currently at, definitely check us out to find out more about that free support. If you're already a member or connected with us, reach out to us or your contacts to find out more about the latest support on offer. But once again, thank you to Sam, thank you to Jennifer for their insight and thoughts, and thank you to everybody else for your time today. Have a great day, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.